Hello, everybody. Dacha How Washa Michael Larson. This is Mike Larson from BBC IML, and this is a moment with Mike. So, still working on how to make this new business work for me. And I got into some things today on some finance, some investment, and I'm going to be doing some new things with investment. And it's going to take me a couple weeks to get all this taken care of, but I'm going to be offering some things out there, so look forward to that. But I want to talk a little bit about investment today, and often what people don't know. This is just my experience. At this point right now, I'm not giving any advice. I'm just going to give my experience with it and what I know about it. But some of the things that I've learned, you have to know if you're going to invest, if you're going to give yourself security with your money, you have to understand some things. Number one, most people look for some sort of life insurance, and there's two different types of life insurance. One is term and one is whole life, and you need to know the difference between the two of them. I'm not going to give advice on one or the other. I'll just tell you that I use term. I don't touch whole life, but you have to study it yourself and find out about it yourself, and see what the difference between the two of them is. Just know that I use term life. The other thing that I would say, if you're looking for advice, there's two different places you can get advice, two different experts. One is an investment advisor, and they know their stuff. They should know their stuff, and there's very good ones. There's investment advisors out there that have gotten so good at it that they will only touch people that have $100 million portfolio. So they're very good at it, and they're probably well worth the money that you'd have to pay to have that kind of a person handling your portfolio. But advisors are in it to make money, and obviously, and they're there to help you too. But they have, and probably the best advisors are the best in money out there. But you have to be careful about who you choose. Make sure you have an idea of what they do and what the money is and everything. So, and then there's fiduciaries. Fiduciaries don't make as much money. But they're supposed to be experts on the advice. And I would recommend first finding a fiduciary and finding somebody that really knows what they're doing. Typically, if you're going to have somebody handle your money, if you're going to have anybody help you with anything, if they can put it into simple terms for you, if they have a teacher's mentality instead of a salesman's mentality, where they can put it into simple enough terms that you can understand it, and they can do that, then you kind of figure that they probably understand it pretty well. If they struggle talking about it to you, I would question how much they really know about it. But you have to understand the difference between the two of them. And then you have to have some idea about compounding money. You have to understand what compounding money is. And there's a lot of things you have to understand about that also. Number one, what is a good interest rate? We have to remember that your inflation is going to be average, somewhere between 3 and 4%. So whatever rate you get, it has to be at least 3 to 4%. And then if you're going to go with an advisor or a fiduciary, you have to know what percentage they're going to get out of that. And remember, they get it up front. So you have to add that on it too. And just to break even, you have to get an interest rate that's worth both of those put together and more. Anything beyond that is what you're going to earn. And that's why you have to be careful about who you're going to work with. So those are some of the things you need to think about. Now, if you really study investing, Warren Buffett has done a great job. He's probably the premier expert on investing. If you had invested $7,000, I think it was back in 1984 with him, you'd probably have over $1 billion right now. But he always says you leverage the dollar. So this is something you got to know a lot about. You better have some help with this. But if you leverage the dollar is losing money, and you borrow money on the dollar and you pay for something that's going to go the other direction. See, the dollar is losing the 4%, and whatever you buy is gaining the 4%. So that's an instant 8% difference. So that can offset some of your inflation, and then it isn't as big of a hit on you. Plus, you're leveraging money, so you're paying back the money at a decreasing amount. By the end of that loan, you've paid the money you're paying back has less value than when you got it, but whatever you bought is going upward. And you have to understand what's called the rule of 72. So the rule of 72 is that if you take the interest rate you're earning and divide it into 72, for instance, if you were going to earn 12% and you divide it into 72, that means your money is going to double every 6 years. If you're only earning 4% and divide it into 72, then it's only going to double every 18 years. If you happen to get 24% or something like that, you might be doubling every 2 to 3 years then. So obviously the higher interest rate, but if you divide that amount into 72, it'll tell you how often that money will double. One of the interesting things, compounding, is you have to use compounding. And the earlier you get into it, the earlier you invest, the more money you're going to make. For instance, if you took and put away $1,000 a year from the time you were 18, if you put away $1,000 a year for just 10 years at an interest rate of 10%, you would invest $1,000 a year. That's for 10 years. That's $10,000 you would invest. Compounding it, and you never put another dollar into it, but you just left it in there earning 10%. By the time you were 65 years old, that would be worth $1.4 million. If you started at 28 and you put $1,000 a year in for the rest of your life at 10% until you were 65, I think it's less than $1 million that you'd have in there. So compounding is huge. The earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. So you want to start early. Another interesting point, think about this. So if you had a choice to take 1 penny or $1 million, but here's the catch. The penny doubles every day for 30 days. And the $1 million is just $1 million. Which would you take? Now, most people would say, well, I'd take the $1 million. That's an easy choice. Think about compounding now. You take that penny and you double it every day for 30 days. So it's 1 penny, then it's 2 pennies, then it's 4, then it's 8, then it's 16, then it's 32, then it's 64, then it's 128. And it doubles like that every day. By the time you get to the end of that 30 days, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I think it's about 1.5 million that penny doubled every day. Now here's the thing. If you gave that same scenario and you said, okay, if I give you a penny and we double it every day after 29 days, or you take $1 million right now, which would you do? Well, you take the million then, because it's the last day before the 30 days that it actually gets over $1 million. So the first 29 days of that time frame, you're better off with $1 million. It's not until that last day of double that it would be worth the investment. And if you go to 31 days, now it's 3 million instead of 1.5 million. The next day, so compounding is huge. The further you get along with the compounding, the bigger it gets. So, because every time that compounding is, so if it's 10% on $100, the first year you'd have 110, but the next year you'd have 111, and each year it does that until it doubles after 7.2 years. So understand this. And a good book that I read where I learned a lot was Tony Robbins' Mastering Money. It's a very good book. I would highly recommend getting that book. But he talked about, there was somebody in that book, I can't remember the name of the guy, but somebody in that book that just handles 100 million plus portfolios. And his method of investing money was remarkable. So the ratio is that you take 40%, you put it in Fortune 500. You put 30% into long-term bonds. And a long-term bond and Fortune 500 are opposite. So when the Fortune 500 is up, the bonds are down, but they don't go down too far. When the bonds are up, they don't go up too high, but the Fortune 500 is down then. But the offset is better for the one that's up than one that's down. And then 15% in annuities and short-term annuities, 7.5% in cash or gold, and 7.5% in commodities. And if you take that ratio, every time you make money, you put the money back in at the same ratio. I think they put it out for the last 120 years and tested every year with that ratio. And there was only 2 times it lost money. The first time was when the stock market crashed in the 1930s, the huge stock market crash that created the Great Depression. And then in 2006 when the stock market crashed then. And there was people during those 2 times that lost 70% of their money, some even more than that. It was a disaster in both of those times. And I think we all remember 2006. And the worst thing people did is they took their money out because they got scared. So what would happen with that ratio, I think it was like 0.9% interest, or would have been the loss in the 1930s. And 2006, I think, is 1.38% would have been the loss. Minuscule compared to what people lost because they didn't have diversity in their money. Diversity is the most important thing. But you have to keep the diversity. So whenever you win, you put it in everything and you never take it out, because the best time to invest is right after a crash. When the stock market crashes, everything's a bargain. And so you just keep putting money in at the same rate. And yeah, there's going to be times you lose money, but that stock market comes back and you gain it back because you keep buying when that market is down. So when the rise comes up, and it always does, you're making more money than you were before. And when it does go down, when it does crash, which isn't very often, it's only been, I think, 3 times probably in the last 70 years or 100 years. But if it does crash like that, you've got it spread out, so it isn't that big a deal, because when it crashes like that, the long-term bonds go up because everybody invests in the long-term bonds because they're safe. So your 30% there mostly offsets the 40% you're going to lose, and then annuities would probably lose in that point too. But gold would go up, and commodities are hit and miss. You don't want a ton of money in commodities, and commodities you got to be careful with because they have to be a certain type of commodity, because some commodities, no matter how much money you put in, you could lose it all. So you just have to be careful. There's a lot of people that invest in Bitcoin. My experience with Bitcoin is, yeah, it's a good investment, but it's high risk. No matter what people say, it's a high risk investment. And there's lots of bad players out there. So make sure you know who you're dealing with when it comes to Bitcoin. I've had friends that have lost all their money, and no matter who it is, my recommendation, well, you have to do your own investment. But the way I would handle it is I would only spend money on Bitcoin that I could afford to lose. I wouldn't put anything more into that. Treat it like you're going to the casino. So some people go to the casino and try and spend too much, and it's a disaster for them. But if you go there saying, I'm going to spend $100, and when that's done, I'm gone. Same thing with Bitcoin. Yeah, you can make money in Bitcoin. There's been people that made fortunes in Bitcoin and investing in money, overseas money. But that's a very volatile market. I'm not sure. I really don't understand Bitcoin that well. I just know that if you're going to invest in that, you better know what you're doing on it. So I thought I'd give a little information on that, or at least my experience with it. And there's lots of experts on it. I am actually going to be getting my license to do that for this new adventure I'm doing. So I will keep people in touch with that. But there are some really good books out there. I think the best book I've read, though, was Tony Robbins' Mastering Money. And he just interviews the experts, the people who have done it. And it's a really good book. It's a really good read. And obviously, if you're not actually going to take the time to study this stuff, just make sure that you find somebody you trust, and make sure they diversify your money. And like I said, if you're gonna invest in money, I'd highly recommend reading that book. I'm actually going to learn more and more about this, but if you have, as I go along, if you have some questions for me, I'll do the best I can to answer them also. So that's what happened today. I'm looking forward to this new venture. It doesn't change what I'm going to do with the other things. It's just another avenue to help people. The company I'm going with is a good Christian-based company, so I trust that they're going to have the best interest in mind of the people that I'm going to try and help. So I see Wendy's here, Chad's here, and David Cash is here. You guys have a super fantastic evening, and everybody else. If there's a subject you'd like me to go over, you'd like me to take on, just let me know. Email me at mike@inspiredmotivatedleadership.com, or you can text me on Messenger, or put a message up on Facebook, or right on here if you want to. How this works, I keep telling everybody, is the more interest I get from you guys, the more Facebook's going to pay attention to me, and the more I can help people, the more I can reach people. So I appreciate any comments you can put on here, or any likes or anything like that. That's super fantastic. And I hope this finds you well. Once again, have a super fantastic evening, and we will talk soon.